With all that out of the way, let's jump in and get started. We're happy to have two very experienced project experts with us today. Our guest industry expert, Stephen Airy, joins us from Calgary. Stephen is Director of Global Projects, Solutions and Consulting for CoreWorks. He brings over 25 years of experience in the management of engineering, procurement, supply chain, construction, commissioning, and capital portfolio delivery in the oil, gas, and chemical industries. We're also happy to have Kelly Maloney with us again. Kelly is our Senior Product Manager for Interface Management and brings over 20 years of experience with enterprise software applications for project management and information management. Kelly has worked with some of the largest EPCs and owner-operators to implement interface management solutions that service multi-billion-dollar projects with thousands of interfaces. Together, Stephen and Kelly will discuss the PMT's interface management responsibilities, and Kelly will demonstrate key CoreWorks interface management features developed specifically to help project teams with interface management. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you, Teresina. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to be here today and talking to you about interface management for the project management team. I want to just cover our agenda before we get started. We're going to provide you with a brief introduction to CoreWorks, and then Stephen Airy is going to do a presentation on the interface management essentials from the project management team's perspective. So he's going to share with us some of the challenges that are facing the industry today, particularly around project complexity and the large volume of information that flows in and out of a project. Talk about some of the execution challenges and managing that complexity and information flow. And then we're going to focus a little bit on the technology requirements. So what does a project management team really need in a good software tool to manage project interfaces? When Stephen is done, he's going to hand it back over to me, and I'll give you a product demonstration which will demonstrate the features of our solution that support the challenges and requirements that Stephen discussed. And then, as Teresina mentioned, we are going to do some Q&A at the end, so you can log your questions anytime within the Adobe Connect application, and we'll field as many questions as we can upon completion of the demonstration. All right, so I'm going to get started with just a brief overview of CoreWorks. For those of you that are new to CoreWorks, again, welcome. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on CoreWorks. We're a software company that builds integrated information management solutions for engineering and construction projects. We really focus on key areas and business processes that manage risk and promote project execution. And we do this through the ability to share information and documents, and by automating the business processes that connect teams and keep project stakeholders informed, which ultimately results in better decision making, better collaboration, and greater chance for success. CoreWorks is an enterprise application. This means that you can host a single project or multiple projects, many projects on a single site. And really the key benefit to an enterprise application is that you're ensuring compliance and consistency across all your projects, but also supporting unique project requirements through project configuration. CoreWorks is used around the world across many different industries, and we have supporting a project portfolio of over $900 billion. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we offer and our product line. Our core platform, or our core product, is our Project Information Control, or PIC as we refer to it. And this really supports the major processes of information management, including document management, transmittals. We have a built-in automated workflow engine that supports the different work processes such as design reviews and approvals and squad checks, as well as a collaboration portal where all project teams can log on to the system and access information and share information. And this includes both the internal project team as well as external parties, including EPCs and vendors and suppliers. So in addition to our Project Information Control sort of core platform, we support the add-on modules or solutions that you see here. Of course, today we're going to focus on our interface management solution, but we also offer our projects change management solution, RFI, request for information, very important on any project. We have a web API that allows us to integrate with other software tools and systems that are, integral to any kind of project success. Newest member to our product suite is, and we're very excited about it, is our contract management offering. So these are I call them add-on modules or solutions that support our project information control platform. But I also want to point out that they can be supported standalone as well. So we have many customers and clients, for example, that start off with our interface management solution and they build from that point. So it is possible to implement a subset of what you see here, or of course start off with our project information control platform. All right, so with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen now. Stephen, as Teresina mentioned, is our Director of Global Project Solutions and Consulting. Stephen has over 25 years experience in managing capital projects, both from the owner's perspective as well as the contractors. So he's going to give us a great overview from kind of both sides of the fence. So Stephen's going to again talk to us today about interface management essentials, particularly how it relates to the project management team's perspective. So I welcome Stephen. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, you made me reminisce a bit of when back in 1998, I actually was an interface manager on a number of projects for Statoil, which involved brownfield sites, multiple modules, offshore platform, onshore pipelines. And in those days, it was a very, very new discipline. And we basically had emails and spreadsheets. And then in 2005, on the Pearl GTL project, I had the team that basically built the interface management toolkit. So in hindsight, I've done it and I've built it as well, which it's interesting to go back down memory lane with that one. But from a 10,000 foot level, in terms of your project as it goes through its typical project life cycle of identify, select, define, execute, and complete, the number of participants on that project grows exponentially. On any one project, you may have up to 100 different purchase orders, around 50 different contracts for different services or goods. And typically the way we manage that is through those formal relationships, those contracts, which link the various parties together. But the reality is on any project that it's the informal links that you need to manage more effectively. So it's those dotted lines that go between parties. So, when you need to get the operations guy to talk to the vendor, to get the guy on site. So that's really what we're talking about when we talk about interface management. It's management of those required channels of communication, making sure everybody's on the same page and is all contributing to the overall project and its schedule. So from a project team perspective, what are we really trying to achieve? Well, for me, there's three things that we're trying to achieve. Cost certainty. We all know there'll be changes. We all know there'll be transfer of scopes of work between parties, but it's really looking at that cost certainty from a management team perspective. Schedule compliance. We've got to hit those milestones. We've got to do what we said we were going to do. And to achieve both of those, we need to ensure we've got integration between the various project participants. So what are the big questions that those participants are asking? What am I doing? What's in my scope? When do I need to do it? How do I communicate with the various actors on the project? Who are they? And then that gets even more complex when you actually start into project execution. Who does what? When do they do it? When do you need it? Have I got it yet? Are you late? How do I escalate that? How do I make these things happen in a timely manner? So for me to achieve those three business drivers, cost, schedule, meeting those and getting that integrated team, this is where interface management comes into play. How do I get everybody doing the same thing, using the same process? So let's talk a little about those best practices. What is it we actually need to do? Well, it's pretty obvious that we need some standards and specifications. We all start off the project and we usually say, I want these design specifications, and we focus on the what we're doing, not how we're doing it. So we need those processes and those paths of communication, those protocols defined. The next best practice, define the scope. I'm a big fan of the in-scope, outer-scope model. Say what you're not doing more than say what you are doing. But really, when you define that scope, it has to be embedded into the schedule. That level 1, level 2 schedule, and it needs to reflect both geographical boundaries, physical, and the activities and the services that you need. If I need to do a heavy lift and you've dug up the road and I can't get my crane in, I got a problem. And that contract or technical basis also needs to be in the work breakdown structure. This is where scheduling and planning becomes an art rather than science. And within that schedule, we need those interface points, those key points of contact between party A and party B, or party A, party B, C, and D. Because those interface points are not just a single A to B. They could be one to many or many to one to enable you to actually meet that schedule. And you need to be able to raise and register those agreements that are made, those commitments that are made. It can't be captured in the minutes of meeting and hope that somebody remembers to do it. And once you've made those agreements, you need to be able to track it, report it, share it, and manage that process holistically. So if there's 50 participants on a project with various interface points, from a management team perspective, I need to see that. I need to see how that process is working. Are we hitting those agreements? Is the information being supplied? Because we need to coordinate those activities and make everybody play nice. And we need to see where we may be having issues early in the project lifecycle. So, when we talk about best practice, what are the kind of hints and tips? Things that I've experienced. You need it in the contract. It's kind of simple. But don't panic. You don't need all the details in the contract. You need the principle in the contract. Because often on day one, when you're going really fast, you need to have the intent in the contract, and the detailed protocols and stuff can come later. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve is to ensure that those little things are not missed. You don't want to be sitting there in the field when you're in construction or commissioning, and oops, we forgot that. Get those agreements up front and make sure it's clear how those parties are going to work together. Identify those high risks, the big milestones, the things you really need to focus on, which are in your critical path for project success. Next, we need to clearly define how we're going to work together, and having that oversight capability to see where interfaces are not being agreed, the agreements are not being made in a timely way, or there's a lot of recycle. I won't accept what you sent me. That drawing doesn't adequately convey the information that I need to adequately do my job on the other side of that interface boundary. So that's where that oversight and having everybody in one tool brings the added value. To do that, you've got to define the philosophy and the framework. Often you'll find that different parties will have a different definition of what that interface is and how they want to package it up. So from a management team perspective, you need to work very closely early on with the various participants, especially when you start to see a lot more joint venture projects, multiple native languages, different cultures, different ways of doing work. You need to be able to see that early on and manage that relationship. And last but not least, if it's open, doesn't mean it's on track. So where you can see in the tool set that those agreements are not being made in principle, where those deliverables are not being met from the various parties, that's when you need to step in as a management team and expedite and help different participants on the project work together. So, in terms of technology, what do we need? We need that schedule integration. We need to be able to pull information from Excel, Project, P6, whatever it is you're using to help plan your project, and treat some of those work breakdown structure milestones as interface points, so they can cascade into whatever technology or tool you're using. Those interface points will define who's going to work together, so clearly outlining the relationships on each point and who needs to participate. and that helps define and monitor that scope boundary. Interfaces will potentially generate changes because it wasn't in the contract for what I was supposed to do. It needs to create interface agreements. So it needs to have that workflow process that allows me to ask, confirm, and receive information. I need to be able to see and have the capability to track, monitor, and raise those alerts. That email pester power, you're overdue, you're going to be overdue next week, you need to do something now. Next, reports. If it doesn't come with reports out of the box, in my opinion, it's not a solution. And for every one of our solutions, there's a suite of what I'll call desktop reports to help you do your job. It needs to be real-time generation, or near to real-time. I need to see every day what my status is. Where am I? As an individual participant, or as the management team overseeing the various participants on a project. So what we really need are those early warning indicators, those trends, open, close, pending, to help manage the team's performance. And for me, that's the toolkit that I'm looking for when I look at any technology. So I want it to be able to achieve all of those things with an out-of-the-box toolkit, with a bit of configuration for my project, work breakdown structure, my discipline codes, that kind of thing, configuration, so that I can quickly be up and running on a project. So that was my perspective from a management team perspective, on a management team's role. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Kelly, and she's going to start showing you some of the functions within the CoreWorks suite for interface management. Kelly, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Stephen. That was great. Really gave us a good perspective of the project management team, some of the challenges that they face, and certainly managing all the different parties and the various delivery teams is a challenge, definitely. And you talked about cost certainty and about ensuring everybody understands all their scope and their responsibilities at each interface, and the impact that their responsibilities have on the overall project. So the project management team really needs to be very diligent and very effective in scope management with regards to project interfaces. And I really think that CoreWorks supports this in many ways across all of our different solutions. Today, of course, we're specifically talking about project interfaces, but probably what sets us apart more than anything is our interface point model. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. It's the interface point model and the ability to manage those boundaries between the scopes of work, ensuring communication and collaboration happens, and ensuring that the project management team has that oversight and visibility into that process, and they can manage interfaces and intervene when necessary, if two parties are maybe not playing nicely together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hop over to my demo system. And so this is the CoreWorks login screen for those of you new to CoreWorks, and I'm going to log in here. I'm going to log in as Ian. Ian's my actor today, and Ian is part of the project management team. He's the interface manager for the project management team, and it's his responsibility to have oversight and support of the various delivery teams that are managing the interfaces for the project. So when I first log into CoreWorks, you'll see here over on the left-hand side we have what we call our project tree. This is quite a feature-rich project tree. And this is unique to Ian. So we have a roles-based security model in CoreWorks. So when you log on, what you have access to and the documents you have access to are controlled by our security model. So the project tree here for Ian as part of the project management team is quite feature-rich. He has access to pretty much everything on the project. But of course, a contractor's view or a supplier or vendor's view of that project tree would look very different. So the first thing Ian wants to do, and Stephen touched on this a little bit, is that he wants to be able to monitor the status. So he's going to want to do this on, if not a daily basis, at least a weekly basis, as he wants to go in and understand what is the status of my interface program. Are interfaces progressing? Are the commitments to the interface agreements being met? So he's going to start off each day with viewing his dashboard. And in CoreWorks, the dashboard is our graphical view of the online register. Because CoreWorks is a web-based tool, all parties that are authorized and given access will be able to log into the system and manage their interfaces here. So this includes your EPCs, your contractors, your vendors, your suppliers. So they will all be accessing the CoreWorks system to manage their interfaces. Now the benefit of this is that you're no longer manually managing multiple spreadsheets. You're not kind of gathering information from multiple sources to try to make sense of it and to try to understand how your program is progressing. So if I can just draw your attention to the right-hand side here, we're going to come back and look at some of these other graphical reports in just a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about the interface point summary dashboard report that we see here and the interface point by phase. So we talk a lot about scope delineation and scope definition. That's very important. And when we're talking about interfaces, we're often talking about details that are really below the level that's defined in the contract, which makes the discipline or the practice of interface management even that much more essential. So what we see here is for each of our scopes of work or each of the contracts that we're supporting on this project, we've got a report that shows the number of interfaces that fall under that scope of work or under that contractor's responsibility. So if we look at the CUC scope package here, we see that there's 56 in total interface points. They're interfaces that they need to manage for their project. And then we break it down by the status of that particular interface. So of course, every interface goes through a life cycle. You want to get to the point where they're all closed and completed. And that's what we can monitor here. So this is a good tool to help Ian and help the project management team to manage scope, monitor the progress, to see how well they're doing on a daily basis, and really just to measure that progress at a package level. The other report that we see here that's very important as well, and this is an optional component of CoreWorks. Stephen talked about being able to support a configurable project, and that, we've been doing this at CoreWorks for a number of years, and if it's one thing I've learned is that every project is unique, and every project needs to tweak things slightly. So even though you want compliance and governance and there's standards and rules you have to follow, there are sometimes allowed changes and tweaks to every system. So we are a very configurable system. We support multiple projects in that project tree, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the things that is configurable is to be able to monitor your interface points by phase. So this gives you the added ability to not only understand how you're measuring progress at the package level, but you can now also see as those interface points transition through the various phases of your project. How many interfaces are still considered to be still in detailed design? How are we doing in detailed design? What's progressed to procurement or to construction? So we have that ability to manage at that level, which gives you an even greater level of understanding of where your project lies and how well it's progressing. So this is the ability, and of course all of our reports that you see here offer the ability to drill down. So I can take a report and I can click on that segment of the report, and now what I'm doing is drilling down into the SRU and utilities scope package. So now I'm looking at those interfaces by discipline. So I'm able to drill down into the details of these particular interfaces. So again, this is very powerful. If I want to understand, why there's maybe a potential delay in some of my piping interfaces or maybe my electrical interfaces, I have that ability to drill down into those interfaces. So here I see I have 3 interfaces that are still considered in an issue status. Issued is kind of a temporary status that interfaces exist in until they're actually accepted and agreed upon by the contractors who are managing them. So as a PMT, you want to make sure that within, 3 to 6 month time frame, you want to make sure all your interfaces have been accepted by both parties. So even though you've done a good job of interface management and you've included your interfaces in your contracts and your invitation to bid packages, you still need them to come into the system and formally sign off or accept those interfaces once the contract award process is done and they're actually logging into the CoreWorks system and they begin managing those interfaces. So as a PMT, you want to make sure that you don't see too many issued interface points outstanding, too many months into the project, because that could lead to a potential problem There's interfaces that are being, I guess we could say, neglected or not handled, and so you want to stay on top of them. But basically, all of our graphic reports allow you to drill down to the detailed reports such as this. And then, of course, handy for any system and any tool is the ability to export. So maybe you need to take this report to a meeting, you want to export it into PDF or Excel, or you're including it in some other type of report to upper management. You have the ability to do that. Okay. The other very important thing, I'm just going to set this aside for a minute. I'm going to minimize this graphical view of our reports. The other important thing to a project management team is to be able to measure and monitor progress over time. How are things progressing? How are we doing over the last 6-month period or maybe 12-month period? Is there any potential areas of concern that I maybe need to look into a little bit more? Because really, as a project management team, you're there to support the delivery team. So you're there to support the EPCs that are executing the project. And also, of course, to support the client and the end result of having a successful project brought to market. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of the tabular reports that we offer, because it's all about reporting. I mean, it's not all about reporting, but certainly reporting is a very key component to the system and to any system. I mean, gone are the days where you had to kind of manually pull together information from spreadsheets and email to generate the report that you're required to provide, right? As the project management team, you're reporting back to the client or you're reporting to upper management. And that can be a very time-consuming, costly endeavor to pull that information together. And by the time you provide the report to the client, it can be 3 or 4 weeks stale. So these are all real-time reports, real-time data that you have, basically at the click of a mouse available to you. So the other report that I wanted to show you today was our interface trends report. I'm just going to go ahead and execute this report. All of the reports in that you see in CoreWorks give you the ability to filter the report. That gives you that ad hoc type capabilities. You can filter by package, by discipline, by contractor name. This particular report just gives you a reporting period to filter by. So I went ahead and I just accepted the default. So what we're looking at here, so this project's been in play for quite some time. So it started back in January of 2013. And what I can see is over that period of time, I'm looking at a chart that's showing me my planned completion of interface agreements and the commitments that are being made by the delivery teams and the EPCs on the project versus the actual progress that they're making. So the yellow trend line that we see here is the planned progress and the planned completion and closeout of those interface agreements compared to the actual progress. And of course, what you want to make sure you're monitoring is that gap between the two does not get too great. Now this project here does not have really great measurements or great results. They're not quite completing their interface agreements as per the plan. The other thing you can do on this report is if you scroll down, there's actually 2 grids that we display here as well that are very useful to the project management team and to the client and owner operator as well. Here we have the grid for interface agreements, and we also support action items. So this is a kind of less formal type of request between parties on the project. So we can have action items generated and created and support, of course, an action item register. And then, of course, interface agreements, which are a little bit more formal than the action items. So here we're looking at, again, interface agreements by scope package. And then we're breaking them down by, the total agreements, the total that are open, those that are overdue, and who's currently responsible for. Are they overdue and they're in the requester's hands, or are they overdue and in the responder's hands? Because that's an important distinction. You need to know who you need to follow up with, right? Are they overdue because the requester has received the response but has just not closed out the agreement? Or are they overdue because the responder's not meeting their commitments? And then, of course, what's new this month and what's closed this month. So what's new this month can help you understand potential scope creep or scope increase with regards to the amount and volume that you're tracking for each of your scopes of work. And then, of course, we use the red, yellow, green indicator just to show you potential areas of concern. So as you can see here, we do have for our the CUC utilities package here, we do have 25 interface agreements that are overdue, and the chart tells me that they're in the hands of the responder. So I know that I have a potential problem with a contractor who's maybe not responding in a timely fashion and not meeting their commitments that they've agreed to within the system. So very important report that certainly helps the project management team stay on top of progress. I've seen this report used many times as the report that they provide to the client and to upper management. And as you saw here, it is literally a click of a button to generate and produce this report. So I'm going to take a look now at our search, the search page, because of course this is very important. You have to be able to locate documents and information in the system. And I hope that we've done a great job. I believe that we've done a great job in providing our clients and our users with the tools that they need to quickly locate documents. Because one of the things in unsuccessful projects is that it's very time consuming and costly in order to locate the documents that you're looking for. So that's something that's easily overcome with an online automated system such as CoreWorks. So I'm going to go ahead here. You can, of course, select the document type that you're looking for. So I'm going to do a search for some interface points here. Interface points are the tools that we use to define that scope boundary between two scopes of work, right? Where the responsibility for a physical system or a physical interface or a system transfers from one party to another. And we'll pick on our SRU utilities, our CUC package, and I'm going to go ahead and just execute my search. So this is basically what would replace your Excel spreadsheet. So as you can see here, if I scroll down, I have a complete list of interfaces for the CUC scope package. The bottom of the screen, if you can see that, it's way down in the bottom right-hand corner, gives me a total count. It also gives me the ability to export my results in either a PDF booklet format or in an Excel format. So that's very handy as well, because there are times where you do need to export the information that you're tracking in an automated system like CoreWorks. I'm going to go ahead and further filter the results. We'll pick on the piping discipline and execute my search here again. And now you can see I have a smaller subset of documents. So that helps you kind of narrow down and search for the document that you're looking for. We also have the keyword search capability here as well. So if you are looking for a particular document with a particular word or phrase, you can use a keyword search to quickly locate that. You can also use that to the keyword to enter the document number. So that's very common as well. Everything's driven by the document number. If you have that doc number, you can enter it in the keyword search and quickly locate your document. So I'm just going to filter this by create date, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this HP steam, high pressure steam piping interface that we have logged in the system. Here we have our document number. In CoreWorks, wherever you see the doc number, that is typically a clickable link. So you can click on it and you can open up the document to view the details. So the grid itself, the chart here, the table itself gives me lots of information about this particular interface. But if I want to drive into some of the details, I can go ahead and click on that document to open it up. All right, so here's what the interface point form looks like. You notice we have the document number across the top. It's at revision level 3, so we do monitor and manage all the different revision levels, so that's very important as well. You want to know as your document changes in an update that you're managing those revisions. And we, of course, will take all of this information and we store it in PDF format in our document management system. So it's all available there for handover at the end of the project. The fields that you see in gray are system generated, so they're generated by the CoreWorks automated workflow engine, so it's not required that there's human or user intervention or user input into those areas, which is always beneficial. You want to reduce as much as you can the human error factor. Along the right-hand side, we have all of our key dates, so we track all of the dates. And then basically we get into the details of this particular interface. So we have a title. We track our interfaces by default by area, system, and discipline. That's pretty common. For most projects and most clients that they're tracking them by area, system, and discipline, we can support different attributes and different metadata if your project requires that. We have a link here to a interface type. This is kind of a unique capability within the CoreWorks system, is that we can link and have relationships to other documents. So that's very powerful. What you're seeing here is actually a link to an interface schematic document that describes this particular type of interface in more detail. What we can also do is we can also create links to a risk register, links to possibly a change order or a change request that was initiated and tied or related to this interface point. We can create links and relationships into the document management system. So if there was a P&ID or another design document or drawing shared as a result of an interface, we can create links to those documents. And of course, the power there is that you ensure that everybody that with access to this interface is working with the most up-to-date engineering document that's been provided to the project. Scrolling down just a little bit here, I don't want to spend too much time on this form, but here we have the main parties involved. So we have lead, interface, and support. Some people simply refer to these as contractor A, B, and C. So there's always two parties to the interface. We define some additional scope can be entered in the fields that are provided there. And sometimes you find a third party is sometimes required at a particular interface. Maybe they need to grant access to the site, or maybe it's the installation contractor. So there are various needs and reasons why you may support a third party to an interface. Just scrolling down again, going through this form in a little bit more detail, we have a description, key references, key technical fields. This is another unique feature within the CoreWorks system, is the ability to track the key technical fields that need to be captured. It is very common that this type of information here, temperature, pressure, flow rate, this is the type of information that has to be collaborated and agreed upon between the two parties to this interface. Because if you're responsible for connecting a piping interface, you need to ensure that this technical parameters and this technical information is consistent on both sides of the design.
That's a key point there, Kelly.
Scrolling a little bit more, we're almost done with this form. I just want to point out a few more things. Here is our history or our audit trail. An audit trail is very important to any project that I've ever worked with. You have to have the ability to ensure that people are notified, people are informed. You can go back in time and you can see that, oh, look, on this particular date here, Ivy Smith accepted this interface. So it's a complete audit trail for this particular interface. So anytime anybody touches the interface, updates the interface, accepts or rejects or comments, we're going to track that in the history grid. Comments to date, also very important. You want to track all the comments that people add throughout the life cycle of the project. And then the final thing I just wanted to point out is the interface agreements grid here. So that's a relationship, right? So we have our interface document here, our interface point identified. We know who the parties are. We've got our history grid. We're capturing all the comments. And we're also capturing all of the interface agreements that are created for this particular interface. So at a glance, you have the full, complete history of this interface. This is really powerful for any project management team that's responsible for managing the interface program. It's important for new contractors coming on board or new people, user turnover. These projects are 3, 4, 5 years in duration. As people come and go, it's very easy for somebody to get up to speed by looking through the online interface register, viewing the form, seeing the complete history, at a glance of each and every interface. And also as okay, I think we have a question or a comment.
Yeah.
Okay, Stephen, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to point out, I thought it was very good that you showed those technical details. And really, interface management is about exchanging information in advance of the formal issue of a document or drawing. So a lot of this is trying to get early technical data in the engineering phase. So if you are under schedule pressure, what you're really trying to do is get information to the right party to not slow down their activities or business process. So you're trying to get that information early and get it agreed early and get some confidence that That design pressure is exactly what they're going to see at the end of the day, in advance of a technical document that validates that. So that is really, if you want to accelerate a schedule, this is where this comes into play. Getting that design information engineering early from the other third party and freezing that scope boundary or scope interface point. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, very good, very good comments, and thank you, Stephen. And that is absolutely true. And we're going to take a look at schedule integration right now. But completing those technical fields that you see here on this particular interface is often what the topics of interface agreements are about, at least in the detailed design phase, right? You're making sure that you're sharing and collaborate on that information so you get a consistent design, so you eliminate the rework and the issues that you can run into during construction. So very important, and again, very important that you tie all of this to your schedule, which is where we're going to go next. So that was a good segue into that. Thank you. I'm just going to close this interface point. And we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about schedule integration now, because as a project management team, you're responsible for ensuring this project remains on track. Right? It's your job to ensure that the project is delivered on time. And if not, you want to be able to have early warning indicators that there's a potential issue, and maybe you can mitigate those risks before they become more serious problems. So with interface management, what we typically recommend when I'm working with clients is that they identify those high-risk interfaces. So what are your high-risk interfaces? Because an interface register can get very large very quickly. There's a lot of interfaces, and you'd be surprised if you've not done it before. You'd be surprised at the amount and how quickly an interface register can grow. So maybe you want to focus on those high-risk interfaces. These could be interfaces that have long lead items. Maybe they're on the critical path, or maybe they involve some particularly complex technology, or areas of the project that maybe are new. So you want to monitor them more closely. So think about what your high-risk interfaces are to you. Identify those high-risk interfaces, and then the first step really is that it's collaboration between the interface manager for the project management team, which is Ian, and the planner. All right, they're going to need to work together. Ian's identified the high-risk interfaces that he wants to integrate to the schedule. The planner, of course, owns the schedule, and he's going to work with you to ensure that you get that integration, or that first step in the integration, completed. And really what that first step is that you want to ensure that you've got key milestones. These can be key interface milestones, or they can be existing milestones in the schedule. What you want to do is you want to tie those high-risk interface points to those key milestones in your schedule. With that collaboration with the planner done, what you start to do then is you start to receive either weekly or monthly exports of the subset of the schedule that relate to your high-risk interfaces that you've identified. So this is a collaboration with the planner that occurs early on during the front end planning stage of the project, or as early as can possibly be. And then from that point on, it's just receiving those periodic exports. We import that information into CoreWorks, and then we provide the interface manager with the ability to run some reports that report against that information. So if I go back to my reports page here, we actually have two reports here around the work schedule. We have the work schedule discrepancy report and the work schedule exception report. So the discrepancy report is going to show you and report on those high-risk interfaces that you've identified with the planner. The exception report is going to show you those interfaces that are not tied to your schedule. So both very important reports, because of course as the contractors are going through execution, there could be additional interface points identified or additional interface agreements that are high risk. So as the project management team, you not only want to monitor those that have been integrated with your schedule, you want to monitor those that have not, in case you've missed something, or as the project progresses, there's something that needs to be added. So we're going to take a look at the discrepancy report. I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And I have multiple schedules that have been uploaded to this project. I'm going to pick the most recent one and go ahead and run the report. As you can see, there's also a tolerance filter that you can set. So, if the dates are within, say 10 days of each other and that's acceptable for you, then you can set that tolerance range. I just went ahead with a zero tolerance on the dates. So here we have our work schedule discrepancy report. And what this report is showing, just to go through some of the columns here, just to make sure it's clear to everyone, the first few columns of the report are coming from the schedule. So this is from the schedule that I've imported that has the links or connections to those interface points. So here we have our WBS code, our activity ID, the activity name, and it's been linked to this particular interface point, which is being managed in CoreWorks. And this interface point, you'll notice here there's a few rows that identify that same interface point. So this interface point has been tied to a milestone activity within the schedule, and this particular interface point has a couple of interface agreements that are created for it. So we have a trench backfill and a cable routing inspection task that need to be completed. I can see what the status of those agreements are, and then I see what the schedule completion date is, and what the interface agreement completion date is. And all we're doing is basically comparing those dates. If the dates are aligned, or the interface agreement need date is on or before the schedule completion date, everything's green. That's all good. If there is a misalignment between the dates, what we do is we highlight the interface agreement date, indicating that there's a potential issue there. So as you can see, the schedule thinks the cable routing inspection will be completed by October 30th. However, the contractors who are responsible and involved in that particular inspection have a date of November 16th. So as you can see, it's only off by a few days, but that could potentially impact your schedule and your project. And of course, the divergence there could be much greater. So this is not going to update your schedule. I get asked this all the time. And this is not going to update the interface agreements. When we built this feature, I worked with many planners on many different projects, and they absolutely, across the board, said they would not let CoreWorks update their schedule, and that's very understandable. And the interface managers I worked with did not want the schedule automatically updating the agreements, and you just can't do that. These are agreements between two external parties. They've agreed to a particular date. Now, they might be misguided in the date, and you need to bring them back into alignment. But we did not want to implement any kind of automated updates in that way. What we wanted to do was highlight the potential discrepancy, make the interface manager and planner aware of a possible issue, flag it, and now it's up to the interface manager to take action on this. He needs to look at these interface agreements that are in the red and either get the contractors to bring the dates in, or if that's impossible, now he's talking back with the planner and they're looking at what that impact is to the schedule. So you have that early identification of potential schedule risk. So a very, very powerful tool that's going to help the project management team and the overall project make sure that they remain on track. So that's it for my demonstration. I'm just going to, wrap things up. The project management team is responsible for managing multiple stakeholders that come from, diverse working cultures and experiences. And, many projects can fail due to poor management. There's ineffective governance, inadequate communication, poor planning, uncontrolled scope and rework. So you need to ensure that you give your project management team the tools that they need to be successful. And not only the project management team, but the EPCs and the delivery teams that are also responsible for actually doing this and doing the work and completing the project. And CoreWorks can help provide by providing the solutions that ensure you get that governance, help you manage scope, and make sure that responsibilities are understood. And maybe more important, it provides a transparency, right? The project management team now has the tools and the visibility into the progress that's being made, the commitments that are being agreed upon by the various contractors. It's no longer hidden in emails and Excel spreadsheets. It's very visible, and the project management team has a greater chance of ensuring that the project remains on track. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Teresina. I think she has some questions that have come in throughout the webinar. So Teresina, take it over.
Thanks, Kelly.
And thanks, Stephen.
We have a few questions coming in here. Hopefully we've got time to get to all of them. How many different statuses are there within the system?
Whoa, okay. I'm not sure if I know offhand the different statuses. So an interface agreement goes through a life cycle. The initial status is submitted, right? So the agreement is in place, it's submitted, it's in the register. The status then goes to accepted. And accepted in CoreWorks means, for an interface agreement, means that both parties have agreed to the terms and conditions that have been laid out in the agreement. So yes, I agree to the need date. I can provide that PNID by that date. We're good to go. So it goes from accepted to submitted to response received. So we're at 3. The response is received. And then in a perfect world, if everything's all good, it goes to a closed status. So 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of common statuses. But of course, you can also cancel an interface agreement if it's deemed to be no longer appropriate. You can supersede an interface agreement. So if it had been closed and the information provided, but as we all know, as a project progresses, things change. So you may need to change some of the content of an interface agreement. So we do that at CoreWorks by superseding. So I think overall we have about 5 to 6 different statuses that an interface agreement can go through during its life cycle.
Great, thanks, Kelly. There's another question coming in here. How do you differ an RFI versus an interface? On my projects, we don't decline, rather respond promptly. There's confusion by requester, so Interface Manager guides which format to use.
Okay, I'm not sure if I got that all. So what's the difference between an interface and an RFI? Was the first part of that question. And Stephen, you're welcome to jump in at any time.
In my experience, when we lay out the communication protocols on the project, we always have this conversation about action items, RFIs, changes, etc., etc. But typically, RFIs or queries, I'd use those to manage internally within my project team. So typically, it might be technical queries raised by the construction group to the engineering group, or from the commissioning group to the engineering group. That kind of communication I would use the RFI for. Really, interfaces is similar, but it's really trying to connect those various parties on the project. In the same way that project change management is really for the project management team, and contract change management is on the individual contract. Yeah, but I think you're right. You have to define the protocol and how you're going to use each of these tools and then communicate that out to the project organization or community. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. I've always looked at RFI as a request for information from the field to the project team, whereas interface agreements are, maybe a request for information or data exchange, but they're between 2 delivery teams or 2 EPCs, right? And that kind of is a bit of a distinction as well.
Great, and we've got a couple people asking if the presentation will be available after. Yes, we'll have the recording sent out to you early next week, and it'll just be a direct link for you to download the PDF and the recorded version as well. Another question here, Kelly, I think it was you who mentioned identifying high-risk interfaces. Does the software allow one to assign a risk priority to an interface?
Yeah, we do have the ability, funny enough, in the solution that I showed you today, the interface agreement form has a priority field on it. So you can just flag it as high, medium, and low. And that, again, helps the project management team to identify, those interface agreements that may need to be tied to the schedule. Now, I do get some concerns with that out in the field, in that project management teams have said to me, well, everything will be high risk if we give that. So it's funny, I get a kind of a 50-50 split between those projects who want to actually allow the identification of a sort of a high, medium, low priority on the interface document itself, or if they want to just sort of internally themselves identify those interfaces that are high risk and that they're going to track in their schedule. So there's a bit of pros and cons that need to be taken into consideration when allowing for that identification directly on the form itself. But yes, we do provide that, and we do offer that as part of our solution.
Okay, and we have someone here who wants to know if we have any rail customers implementing the CoreWorks product.
Sorry, I thought you said real at first.
Rail, yeah.
I can't think of a real project that we currently have. Stephen, do you have, right now, primarily our clients are in the oil and gas infrastructure with regards to, we've worked with some wind farm projects, buildings, infrastructure, that type of thing, but I don't believe we currently are working with a rail
I've
project.
had
We
conversations with a couple of organizations, one bringing in an LRT or a light rail transit solution in North America, and another one which was more of a rail infrastructure project as well. So I'll say watch this space. We have interest from those those potential types of project, and they're very interested in our solution.
Yeah, and I'll just comment there. We do have our interface management conference on an annual basis, and we've been getting more and more presentations from rail companies coming. So I think it's something that's really gaining traction in the infrastructure and the rail kind of industry as well. So
Yeah, that's a really good comment, Teresina. And just to add to that, I've attended all of the interface management conferences that we've held, and at each and every one we do have rail projects represented. And I've always thought, oil and gas had great complexity in the interfaces that they needed to manage. The rail guys have, I think, maybe in some cases even greater complexity in the projects and the interfaces that they need to manage for their projects. So it's definitely a discipline that's applicable to rail projects.
and we've got just a couple minutes left here. Is the interface package have the opportunity to work separately from all the CoreWorks software solutions, or just as a part? I guess, is it a standalone, or does it work in conjunction with the other CoreWorks solutions?
Oh, okay. Great question. Our newest product release is, and it was really initially introduced as part of our contract management solution, but it is supported standalone as well, is our packaging capability. So as part of our offering, we do support packaging. These can be invitation to bid packages. They can be created as engineering packages, construction packages. So we do have the ability to group, documents and activities, including interfaces, into packages that are supported within our project information control platform. I hope that answers the question.
We got a question here about the CoreWorks solution specifically. It seems like the software may be the easy part. In addition to the software, does CoreWorks have any expertise they could lend to our product on how to make all this stuff work?
So I'll take that one. So as you saw from my long nebulous title of Global Project Solutions and Consulting, yeah, we bring both our subject matter experts. So for example, for contract management, a gentleman called Ian Foster was our primary architect and is one of our SMEs. And myself, I bring a lot of breadth as well as depth in quite a few areas. So part of my role is to bring that team to help you, not just with the solution, but also with that business process side. You got to handle the people, but we'll help with the process and the solutions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Stephen. We also just launched our Smart Check program. I believe it was earlier last year, where we can come into your office and train a group of your staff on interface management principles and best practices to help you evaluate whether or not you need an interface management program, and if you do, how we can help you get that implemented. So we've hit the 1 hour mark here, and we have a couple more questions that have come in. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. We will send it out on an email, or we can contact you directly. That's not a problem. I'll just some closing remarks here. We do have part 3 of our 3-part series coming up on April 12th. If any of you are owners or working as the operator on your projects, please feel free to sign up for that one as well. Get a further look into the software again. We also have our Project Excellence event. It's our annual event coming up in Houston. The slide there says April 20th. I apologize. It's actually in June 1st is the date that we're going with this year. So look out for that. I'll be sending you emails in the coming weeks. With that, I'd like to thank Kelly and Stephen again for their expertise and their time today. And thank you all for joining us around the globe. We'll be sending out the link to the presentation early next week. Thanks again. Bye-bye.